Yeah,
No. Yeah, no, you're doing great, man. I just, because
yeah,
I'm always seeing you. I mean, you're at all these different events, and
yeah.
you're always rubbing elbows with with celebrities and all these different people. Like, how do you? Well, first of all, I mean, were you always doing that? Did you kind of do that with Quest, and did you? And why are you doing that now? Like, what's your motivation behind? Always going to these events and, rubbing elbows with all these really successful people.
Well, I did it even back before Quest. When I had the executive protection business, I was also the executive vice president of a good friend of mine had a private limousine company. So I was helping him with relationships. So I was always going to hotel events and networking events. And even with Quest, I figured out, well, the easiest way to get product in people's hands or to meet people is to go to events. And that doesn't always equate to a transactional business, but sometimes I would just meet people, introduce myself, get products, donate to charities. And even now that Quest is sold, now I've had a different mindset of, okay, I run into great people like you or Trish from the magazine there, and now I'm in the mindset of, hey, I want to give back to the world, and all these connections, the Dan Fleischmans of the world, Bedros Keuilians, Ed Milet's, and now I want to be in that circle. And it's a circle I'm not really in, right? But I'm getting in it. And because now I can help, maybe, like I say, if the public speaking, if I could change one person, some young entrepreneur, someone that's on the fence on starting a business. So that's kind of my motivation now, to go to these events and meet people.
And so what do you say to those young entrepreneurs that are just trying to get their businesses going and get them off the ground? Because I think a lot of them, they don't get out of their house enough. And it seems like you're always out of your house. So what advice can you give that young entrepreneur about rubbing elbows and networking and things like that?
Yeah, I'll tell you this, and it is true. A lot of people are very comfortable, and even since COVID, they stay home, they're behind the keyboard. And yeah, you can meet people on social media, but how authentic are those relationships, right? But you get out in person. It doesn't matter whether it's a small networking event for a CPG brands or an apparel show. It doesn't matter what city you're in, by the way. There's events everywhere. There's charity events. Just this past weekend, I did something with Dan Fleischman. It's Trina's Kids, which is a give back program from back to school. The more you're out seeing people, meeting people, touching people, the more they're going to remember you. And to the young person starting a business, that's the first step: connections, meeting people, is sharing your thoughts and your ideas on, hey, I have this idea, I want to make this protein bar. What are the pros and cons? Because I quickly either talk people into doing it or talk them out of it, if you know what I mean. Hey, save your money because the route you're going may not make sense. Or, hey, I'm behind you. Let's go all in. Let's be passionate about it. Sometimes people come to me with, they have an idea. I'm helping a kid right now. He's got an idea. And I said, everyone has ideas. I mean, we all daydream. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. I said, but action is what's going to make that a business plan, right? So what's that look like? Take the first steps.
Right.
Go to meet. So I always
Yep.
tell people, listen, step off the curb, meet people, see, flush it out. How about this? Flush it out. Talk to people like you who've done amazing things in financial field or real estate, and say, here's an idea, and quickly put it to bed, or to say, shoot, I'm going to be the next Grant Cardone, or I'm going to be the next whatever, right?
And so it's just, I mean, it really is about relationships. I mean, in my business throughout the years, it's always been about relationships. It's always been about, finding new, great people to connect with, because you have no idea where your next great recruit is going to come from, or your next great employee is going to come from. And you might meet that person like they did with Quest, and they found you, I mean, totally by accident. And you
Right.
end up becoming one of the most valuable pieces of the company. So you have no idea where you're going to meet the greatest people of your life. But if you don't get out of your house, that may never happen, right?
Yeah. I say this to people: the right relationships are better leverage than money sometimes. And just even at the last Tim
Right.
Story event, I met a gentleman and his wife. I gave him some product and we hit it off, and I had no idea what he did. We exchanged information, and now he places CEOs and board members and advisors for like Fortune 500 companies. I never even thought about that. He said, Bruce, I looked at your background. He goes, do you want to be on a board of maybe a company or advisor? I'm like, I didn't even know that was an option. But that was just for me saying, "Hey, how you guys doing? Great to meet you." And we cultivated it, right? So that's better leverage than money, right?
So you were LAPD, right? At
Yeah,
one
I
point.
got out of the Marine Corps and joined LAPD. Yeah, LAPD. Yeah.
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about
And
how all that got started. I mean, why did you decide to go in the military?
So totally boyhood dream to be a police officer. My uncle was a police officer. My sister's boyfriend was. I knew a lot of police officers, and I always had that just envision. As you're young kids, right? Most firemen, policemen, astronaut, whatever. But I visualized it. But I quickly realized I had no path to get there. I was an average student at best, C at best. And out of 5 kids, I was the middle child. I didn't realize at the time. Now, as I'm an adult, I realize it. My parents never had a conversation with me about college. I was going to be the blue collar guy, right? Probably work with my dad. And when I graduated high school, I grew up in a very small town. It was a 6-person police department, 6-man police department. And I remember they knew me. I did ride-alongs. I was kind of like an athlete, but I did. And I remember I went to the chief one day and said, "Hey, I'm graduated now. I want to be a cop." In his own kind words, he said, "You're young, you're immature, and you're not ready. But go in the Marine Corps, and when you get out, I'll hire you." I grabbed my
Wow.
best friend and said, "Hey, we're not really doing a whole lot in this town. We're kind of putzing around. We're doing nonsense. And we went in the Marine Corps. And then, as you know, our most people, where you grew up, you think that's the universe, right? Where, oh my God, this is the world. I mean, I had never been on a plane. I went to New York a couple times for some plays, but I never really
Wow.
experienced life. Quickly realized New Jersey was not the whole world. And I traveled the world. And I quickly realized too, because a lot of people say, "Oh, you've been lucky in things," and I said, "Yeah, sure. Maybe there's luck, maybe there's timing, but also I think the relationships have been carrying me. Even when I was in the Marine Corps, I connected with some of my bosses. They just knew me as I mean, yeah, I was Lance Corporal Cardenas, right? But I was always likable. And I remember one of my bosses said, "I don't know what it is about you, but I'm recommending you for this position. Don't embarrass me." And it was to be on the security detail for the general of the Marine Corps. That taught me so much. But anyway, so I've always been in that service minded. But when I got out of the Marine Corps, I ended up in California just by mistake. I was here for an event for the Marine Corps, and I was at Camp Pendleton. It was a career day, different companies and trucking companies, IBM and the CHP, and I was like, wow, beautiful people, beautiful weather, and you can get paid. So I started processing, and I remind people this: there was no internet, you couldn't go online. I had
Right,
to
right,
go get an application,
right.
fill it out, mail it in. The process, it took about a year, but I got on with the LAPD, and while I was processed to become a cop, I saw an ad in the newspaper, and I went and I sold cars at a brand new Mitsubishi dealership. Never sold anything in my life. I was their number one salesman for 9 months straight.
Wow.
And I
Awesome.
credit that to just to relationships. I didn't BS people. I just, "Hey, check it out. You want to check out the car?" So those things keep happening. So at some point you got to realize, okay, it's not luck. It's relationship capital. It's valuing people. Then I joined LAPD, and it fulfilled a boyhood dream. And there again, it's one of the lessons I talked about this recently on a podcast. In the academy, all they teach you is rules and regulations. The world's black and white. I quickly learned some very human things about being a cop. And my first training officer was an old gruff guy, a Vietnam vet. And I remember when I got in the car, he drew a picture of a face and had 2 big eyes and 2 big ears and no mouth. And he said, you know what that is?" He goes, "That's you. I need you to do a lot of listening, not a lot of talking, and pay attention." And it quickly, once again, created my listening skills, the listening ability. And I talk about that too. Most people don't listen in life. They're already thinking, they're already replying before you finish. So I learned so many valuable lessons about how to treat people right. I always say this: the world's not black and white; it's gray. And I lived in the gray zone. I probably kept people out of jail. I was a verbal. I called verbal judo. I learned how to talk to people and de-escalate things. And there's also one thing: I live within the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. So I was a very easygoing cop. I mean, in that, like, I understand a lot of people are a paycheck away from a crisis. And the problem is, I don't think a lot of cops think like that. They were trained in the academy. Here's the rules. Here's the regulations. But when you get out in the real world, things happen. It's not everyone's a bad person. And I really learn how to treat people right. And that's another thing I prided myself on, how to treat people well, even if, yeah. I'll never forget this. This is one time, one of many things, but we got a call of a bank robbery in progress. We show up, the guy walks out of the bank, puts his hands up. I'm busted. And so, we put him in handcuffs and he's crying. And what happened? He goes, my house is going to be foreclosed on. And I just thought, I just gave the teller a note and said, I need $5,000 to feed my family.
Right.
And it actually pained me because he was so desperate. Right.
Right.
And even when the FBI came, I talked to the FBI and said, hey, listen, he's not a bad guy. I think he probably ended up having to do like 18 months in jail. But my point is this: there's people, circumstance happen. I'm not saying that was an obviously logical thought process, but anyway.
If you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. If you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.